your people expect from you to kill the enemies. So the enemies, whether you like it or not, are becoming military targets. And I'm not proud of it. I killed many people in many ways. I knew nothing about them personally. I didn't know their names. I didn't know their families, their wives, their children, with whom they pray in the mosque. You didn't need it. A military commander, all I ask is how to kill. And we have been fighting so many years, and what happened to us is horrible. Because if you ask me, and this is the way I understand our war, we won the war. And we refuse to recognize our victory. And I'll say it again, although many people believe that I'm a traitor, if I were a Palestinian, I would fight against the Israeli occupation. I will never accept the Hamas ideas, but against the occupation in order to achieve my freedom. And I will add that every statement, Israeli statement, and every military commander who will give you a different answer, he is either stupid or he just do not know his enemy, and he will never win this war.
All right, new episode of Jung Naiv. I have a new guest. Who are you?
Well, it's a very interesting question. I'm asking myself every day, who am I? My name is Ami Ayalon. I was born in the Jordan Valley, which is on the other side of Israel. And as a child, when the Syrians were up above, and we used to spend many days in shelters, but it was okay because we knew exactly what for, to build the state of Israel. And
you were born in 45.
Yeah, I was born in 45, and my parents came from Europe during the British Mandate as a legal immigrant. My father, my mother, a child, to study in Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. And when I was 18 years old, I joined the military, in my case, Naval Commando. The idea was to do it for 3-4 years, but I found myself leaving the Navy after a military career of about 35 years as a commander of the Israeli Navy. I fought too many wars, too many battles, too many operations. I lost
too many.
I lost too many friends. Mm-hmm. And the idea was to join, the business community. But it was immediately about 1 month after the assassination of our Prime Minister, Rabin. And Shimon Peres, who was the Prime Minister then, asked me to replace the director of the Israeli Shin Bet, who retired as a result of the assassination. And I couldn't refuse.
Why?
Why? Because, I don't know, I think that since the war of attrition, I find myself in the shoes of my father, who cared. He never could separate from his personal life and his collective, or the way he saw, the future and the security of the state of Israel. I remember that when he was very old, he came in 38, and when he was 90 years old, before he died, I used to ask him every day by phone, how do you feel? And his house is built on the shore of the lake, Lake of Galilee. Mm-hmm. And on the other side of the lake, he just sees the Hermon mountain. Mm-hmm. But what he cared about is the level of the sea, the level of the lake. And he said, well, because it was the only source of sweet water for Israel. Mm-hmm. So he said, well, how do I feel? I said, not very well. And I knew that it's not him, it's the level of the lake. And he couldn't separate between the level of the lake and, and the state of the nation. I don't know. Anyhow, so I couldn't refuse because I felt that, it's my responsibility. I'm saying it because exactly 1 year before, after finishing almost more than 3 years as a commander of the Navy, Rabin called me and asked me to replace the director of the Shin Bet, and I refused. And I was lucky enough that he didn't ask why. Personally, I know exactly why, because when you are in the Navy or in the military, the reality is very, very clear. It's simple, simplistic. All the colors are blue, white and black. Good guys, bad
friend
guys.
and enemy.
Right, good guys, bad guys, and all what we have to do is to kill the bad guys,
Yes.
and to defend the good guys. And in the Shin Bet, which is internal security, all the colors are gray. It's you have to try to see a potential enemy among your citizens, which for me was against all what I used to believe in. And you have to follow them. You have to sometimes to listen to them, and you have to. Anyhow, so I said no. But after he was assassinated, I couldn't refuse, because I think that it was a moment in which I understood that I'm living in a place that I didn't really know before, the Israeli society, and the idea that a Jewish Israeli citizen will assassinate our prime minister on the question on who we are and what have we come to be here as a people. This was a debate. And, we say, okay, Yigal Amir, he was an assassin, he was a terrorist. But we have to understand that hundreds of thousands supported him. And even today.
It was after the Oslo Accord, right?
Yeah, it was on the reason because Rabin chose to try to negotiate and to achieve agreement between us and to put an end to this war. And there are too many people that used to believe that this is a holy place, and it was given to us by God, and we do not have the right to betray God and the country and etc. etc. So yes, I felt that I don't have the right to say no. So I did it for 4.5 years. I'm still trying to explain who am I.
Yeah.
And I will finish by saying that the way I understand myself and the way I understand the Israeli society, the people who are living around us, the Middle East and the world, I think that it is a result of almost 4.5 years as the director of the Israeli Shin Bet. Much more than the way I understood myself during my childhood. So yes, okay. Today
You retired?
Yes, I retired several times, by the way, from the Navy, from the Shin Bet, and from some business, organizations that I led.
You went to politics, right?
Yeah, I tried politics. I was a lousy politician. Because when you are, when you are elected and you cannot change the reality according to what you believe in, so there is no reason to stay there. So it took me about 4 years to understand. I just didn't listen to my wife. She told me from the very beginning, you don't fit.
Why did you say that?
Well, she was right. And today I can tell you that every politician will have to decide every day whether he is taking his decisions in order to improve the future of his country, its health system, education, science, security, whatever, or he is taking the same decision in order to be elected, to convince his base. Yes. And those who survive are the people who are giving up on their dreams and too many times forget why they enter to politics. And we blame them, but it is not, we shouldn't. We created a system, political system, in which they are not elected every 4 or 5 years. They are elected every day because of the revolution in media, communication,
polling,
networks, with the globalization, change the world. And the power, the political power, is not in their hands because they have to be elected. In a way, every day they ask you and me, where do you want us to lead? Where do you want me to lead you? Polls.
Shouldn't it be the other way around? Like we elect people.
It was during the 19th century. Clausewitz, etc., etc. Yeah, it was. This is. We don't understand the change. These two revolutions, or media, the way we understand the reality, the way we get and we digest, and we store and we mine the information. Created a major change on everything, on our economy, our security, the way we fight. By the way, you will ask later about the war. Everything is different. So we shouldn't blame. We have to, not to blame ourselves, but to take responsibility. We should shift from a language of blaming everybody. We blame Palestinians, we blame our prime minister, we blame our parliament members. No, it's to a language of responsibility. Language of responsibility start with a totally different question. What can I do about it? What did I do about it? And then to try to understand the other side, etc., etc. Anyhow, so
introspection.
So yes. I think that we as a community, in many places, but I'm speaking as an Israeli, we do not want and refuse to see us from outside, which means to see and to try to understand our enemies or the people who do not agree with us. And again, this is a language of blame. We blame Palestinians, we blame the international community, we blame everybody who do not agree to what we are doing, and we do not give ourselves any answer because we do not ask. What can we do or what did we do in order for him to see us the way he sees?
Before we dive in, tell us real quickly, where are we?
Yeah, we are sitting now in my, not my, but it belongs to my family, olive grove. This tree behind us, one of the professors told me that he is between around 600 years old. And it's very, very important because, I know that I didn't plant this tree. I was not here when it was planted. It was during the Mamluk and later Ottoman Empire. And in a way, it gives you some perspective, who we are and what is our role. And a friend of mine told me, he deals with olive trees, and he said once, we have to remember all of us are here in order to make sure that these trees that we did not plant will survive and will live after us. This tree is still giving fruits and will produce olive oil from a tree which is more or less 600 years old. So we are here in the south of the Kerman mountain. These are the hills of the mountain, which is up to the north. And yeah, it's a village, agricultural village. And yeah, this is the place.
You didn't grow up here.
No, I didn't. I was born in the Jordan Valley. And I left the kibbutz. It was a kibbutz.
Oh, okay. What kind of?
I left the kibbutz because the kibbutz decided, in the kibbutz, the kibbutz decide for you what you will do, because this is the voice of the majority. It's a total, a type of democracy. I don't know, equal rights. Everybody has equal rights, and we decided. I decided then that I see myself as a going on serving. It was after the 6 Day War. I decided, and the whole security of our small country we felt on our shoulders. It was a war of attrition, and many people from the unit died, and many were wounded. And I said, okay, I'm not going to ask anybody. I'm just going to leave the kibbutz. So I left the kibbutz, and then I fell in love with my wife today, about 55 years ago, and we left to her kibbutz. But later, after finishing my first degree in the university, still in the Navy, we decided that we want our children to sleep with us, which in the kibbutz it was not what we did, because I was in the Navy and I came back only during the night, and I couldn't see my son the whole week.
Where did the kids stay in a kibbutz?
In the kindergarten, all of them. Yes, it's
overnight.
So yeah, of course, okay. Every night, every day. I used to meet my parents 1 or 2 hours a day. Yeah, we didn't need it. It's if you ask me, I had a great childhood. Really, this is the way I understand my childhood. Only as a father, I try to understand. I think that I needed it as a father, not as a child. But this is the way I understand it, and I don't blame it. If I'm not okay, it is not because of the kibbutz. It is because something happened on the way. I have no idea. Anyhow, so I was just nominated as the commander of the Naval Commando here, not far from here. So we were looking for a very cheap place. It was cheap then. It was before the withdrawal from Sinai, when the prices went up.
At the end of 70s?
Yes, it was the 79, yes. So this was probably the only place that we could buy. Today, you have to be a millionaire in order to buy it, but we were lucky. It was not a business wisdom or something like this. And that's it. So I came, and all my children are living here. And one of them, it's not far from here, in a small kibbutz, 15 minutes from here. And I have 5 granddaughters and 4 grandsons, all of them somewhere around.
So you were a soldier for decades, right?
A sailor. I don't know. It's
you were in the Marine.
Yeah, I was in the Marine, in the Navy. Yes.
Why were you a good sailor? Why were you promoted so much?
Why did I?
Why did they promote you?
Okay. Well, you have to ask them. Okay, it's.
You never figured it out.
Well, I tried. If you ask me, I was good enough in order to be promoted. But it's. I'm not here to to praise myself.
You were a good leader.
I have no idea. I want to believe that I did. I did something good, and I did it the right way. But again, I'm not here to answer this very, very important question. I was decorated twice, again because I participated in in a very, very complicated operations. One is the Green Island, etc. If we don't have the time to explain, but okay, it was, we lost out of about 35 people who raided this island. It was a fortified castle, something like this, that the British built in the north part of the Red Sea, the entrance to the Suez Canal from the south. And the idea was to defend the southern entrance. And it was, there was about 120 Egyptians, among them about 80 commando warriors and the rest operators of the machine guns, anti-aircraft, etc., etc. And we have to conquer this island. The only way to reach the island was by diving. So it was during the night. We had to dive and then to climb on the, etc., etc. I was wounded. We lost six of our warriors out of about 30 or 35 people. Anyhow, it was one of the, again, too many operations that I took part. And but the question was why I joined the Navy. It was stupid, I remember that I was asked the question when I volunteered, and I said, "What do you mean? I was born, on the lake of the sea," and they were laughing. What do you mean sea? This is the Lake of Galilee. It's and I said, well, for me it was a major, huge sea. So. Only when I joined the Navy, I understood that, it's okay. They used to say, in Italian, they used to say, there's Marinero dell'acqua dolce, which is, sailors of sweet water. Anyhow, so took me a while to understand. But yes, I loved the sea and the storms and the challenge that the sea creates for every sailor. And the command of a missile boat or a missile boat squadron, or and to dive, and again, so it's I love the life in the sea. And after several years, after the 6-Day War, it was not an adventure anymore. But it was a kind of responsibility, a duty. Again, because in a way, I think that since the 6-Day War, we, all of us, in the Naval Commando, in the Navy, and in Israel, we have been fighting almost every day. It's probably the longest war of the modern history. If you ask me, we are fighting our war for over 140 years, since the concept of Zionism was created. In the end of the 19th century, we used to say, okay, the first Zionist immigrant, 1981, 82. Some people will tell you, okay, even earlier. And since the first day, we have enemies who do not accept our right to declare ourselves as a nation. They used to say Judaism is a religion, is not a state, is not a nation, and we do not have the right to declare ourselves as a state. And they fought, states and organizations, and we have been fighting since then, until we created the State of Israel, and later in order to defend the State of Israel. And we have been fighting so many years, and what happened to us is horrible, because if you ask me, and this is the way I understand our war, we won the war. And we refused to recognize our victory.
You mean the creation of the state?
And no, we believe in the creation of the state. When I say we won the war because finally, why or what for? We fought. We fought in order to create and later to defend the state of Israel as a Jewish democracy. And we won this war in 2002 in Beirut. This was a declaration of our victory. I'm not sure that the audience understand, when I say the 3 no's of Khartoum. Okay, the 3 no's of Khartoum after the 6-day war, in which Israel defeated the Syrian, the Egyptian, and the Jordanian armies in 6 days. They suffered a humiliated defeat. And all the Arab League members, they go to Khartoum, and the 3 no's of Khartoum: no to recognition, no to negotiation, and no to peace with Israel. Israel is not a legitimate entity. And we went on fighting. But in 2002, the world is changing. And it's too complicated, but they unite all the Arab League members in Beirut. And it is after the beginning of Oslo, and it was after, invade of Iraq, first Iraq war, second Iraq war, etc. And they understand that the reality is different. And they change the 3 no's to 3 yes. Yes to recognition, yes to negotiation, and yes to peace with Israel, on the condition that Israel will accept all the Security Council resolutions and the UN resolutions, which we did. But we refused to see it. No government in Israel discussed the Arab Peace Initiative that was agreed in 2002. And we are going on fighting. And if you ask me, the war that we are fighting today is not a just war. Our war was just until 2002. Once they recognize the reason why we fought for, the war that we are fighting today is not a just war. And I'm not sure that all Israelis will agree with me, but frankly speaking, we are fighting in order to expand our eastern border and to deny the option for the Palestinians to declare themselves as a nation and to have their own state side by side on the other side of the border. And we know the Palestinians, but we do not see the Palestinians as a people who deserve a state of their own.
Sounds like the Arabs who didn't want to see
Exactly.
a Jewish state.
Exactly. But we don't see it. We refuse to see it.
Why?
Well, it's I'm not a philosopher, I'm not a historian, but the way I understand it, it's too difficult for us. Look, I'm trying to. I never asked my parents what was their concept of Zionism. Well, I was a child. I couldn't care less. I didn't have questions. Everything was clear. We have to build this state. The Jewish people is in a great danger. They understood it before the Holocaust. All their parents stayed in Europe and were assassins there. I am a generation without grandparents. I didn't see any old person until my parents became old. And I'm saying it because I believe that if I would ask, the answer will be we have to build a state for the Jewish people, which is in great danger. And the state will be wherever in the state of Israel, because this was the place in which the people of Israel were born, the promised land, and it will be wherever we can build a settlement, walk the land, and defend ourselves. So the two pillars were settlements and security. After the 6-day war, nothing was changed. You know, we still have to fight because nobody recognized that, etc., etc. I stayed in the security, in the Navy. The idea was to go back after 4 years. But I realized that I don't have the right to leave the Naval Commando because there is war. And you don't have the moral right to go and to work for yourself or to live a great life. And I'm saying it because for us, it was a dream. We didn't see Palestinians. They were living here. But I, as a child, I didn't see them. Because it was a dream. We are going to create something new. And it's something very, very difficult to explain. Okay, they are here, but we don't see them. We don't count them. And I'm saying it because, in retrospect, it was a dream. And you ask me why it is so difficult. Because the awakening process, the reality, is not as your dream. Suddenly you see that Palestinians are here. Suddenly you understand that this land is yours, but it is not only ours. They are living here for hundreds of years. You know, I have a very, very good Palestinian friend. I met him when we ran a very strange, initiative trying to explain. After I left the Shin Bet and I left the politics, I decided to, before the politics, sorry, after I left the Shin Bet, to run an initiative to explain to the Israelis that we can achieve agreement because Palestinians are human beings and they want a better life. And I remember that, when I met Professor Nusseibeh, he was the president of the largest Palestinian university, which is Al-Quds University in Jerusalem.
I'm going to meet him on Saturday.
Great.
We're going to talk.
Send him my regards. It's okay. He mentioned me in his book, and I mentioned him in my book. Anyhow, you don't have to read these two books. Anyhow, and and you realize that the first question that he asked me. I asked him. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I asked him. He asked me first. Where you came from? So I said, okay, my parents came from Europe, etc. I said, no, your family tree. I said, well, come on, what is a family tree? My family tree was erased during the Holocaust. I don't have family tree. I don't have graveyard, but we are going to create a great future. We have past, a great past. The Bible and the history of 4,000, but this is not I don't have family tree. But I asked him, what was your family tree? And he said, my family tree started in Jerusalem during the 7th century, during the time of Muhammad. And the Christians, with all the respect, they are fighting each other almost as much as we do on who own the Holy Church in Jerusalem. And they need a non-Christian to keep the tree of the Holy Church. Nusseibeh family is a family that keeps for hundreds of years the key of the Holy Church. Ask him about it.
Yeah.
And so I'm saying it because can I tell him, listen, this is mine, not yours? So the idea that you have to divide this piece of land. My mother, after the 6-Day War, I told you that she came to study in Jerusalem. And every weekend, it was, during the late 30s, they used to walk to Bethlehem, to Kever Rachel, which one of the Jewish mothers is buried there. And then they used to walk, which is a long walk, by the way, to the Wailing Wall. And from time to time, they used to drive to Hebron, Ma'arat HaMachpelah, which is Abraham boat, etc., etc. So she told me, okay, I want you to rent a car and to take me to Bethlehem, etc., etc. These are the places that we learn during our childhood. Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Hebron, Jericho. These are places. This is our history. So the awakening process is very, very difficult. And this is my explanation. This is one. The second, I think that as a society, we do not trust anybody. It is not mentioned in our security doctrine, but if you ask me, we do not trust. This is what we learned from our history. We fought in this area. Historians will tell you between 600 to 700 wars in the history of this area, this region, Israel, Palestine, whatever you call it. Many of them were wars that when we were here, we fought. In none of our wars, we were not a member of a coalition. That's it. I remember that during the Sinai war, my father said, well, in a moment of truth, nobody will be there for us. This is what we learned from our history. If you will ask people, why you do not have confidence in anybody, why you are afraid? Some people will start the history from the ruins of the Second Temple, and then they will stop for a moment during the Spanish Inquisition, and then they will go for pogroms, and everybody will stop in the Holocaust. And what we learned is, in a moment of truth, when we are fighting for our existence, nobody will be there for us. The idea that only God, etc., everybody, religious people will tell you, God saved us. And in every, you know what is a Pesach? Okay? If I say to the audience, know what is Pesach, Seder? No, nobody understands. Okay, every year we remind ourselves, the times that we were slaves in Egypt, and the road from slavery to freedom took us 40 years in the desert. This is the Holy Bible. This is a story of the Holy Bible. And the story is based on the idea that only God is there for us. Now, my parents, they left religion and, they changed. But finally, in Israel today, this is a story that we are telling our children. That only we, a secular person will tell you, we did it alone, and the religious person will tell you, God there was for us, and etc., etc.
What about the Americans and Germans? Like, they're very close allies of Israel. You guys don't trust them either?
Yeah, you are too rational. It's a rational question. Yeah, yes. Sometimes we are paying a huge price because we do not trust. If you'll ask me about the recent war, or if you'll ask me about, what we see today in Gaza and in Lebanon, this is exactly the price that we are paying. We do not believe in political agreements. We do not understand the simple concept that every war must end.
It's a historical truth.
Not quite. Not quite. I gave you the example of our war. We are still fighting the longest war of the modern history. This is a war that started somewhere in the, 1980, and still lasts. Many operations, many military campaigns, many battles, but this is only one war for the creation and the defense and the survival of the Israeli state. This is the way we see it.
And is it also about making Israel bigger? Extending the borders to Lebanon?
This is the way I understand, because it's the result of the way we understand the reality, the Middle East.
Is that not a danger of over expansion? When you keep fighting and
This is exactly what is happening. When I said if we shall not change our policy, first of all, you have to understand that when you say Israel, it's a false term. There are more than one Israel. There is the Israeli government, and there is the Israeli people. Most of the Israeli people do not support this government. You see it in all the polls. And most of the Israeli people do not support the policy of this government. But still, deep down, especially after the 7th of October, we did not mention the 7th of October because it's it's an event that shaped not only the Middle East and was, in a way, the beginning or the reason to the war of the last 3 years. It changed the way we see ourselves and the way we see our enemies and the way we understand the neighbors and the way we used to understand our friends. And it was a massacre. We used to think, I used to think that I understand the way of thinking of the Muslim Brotherhood. I tried to do everything in order to learn everything about it when I was the director of the Israeli Shin Bet. But the level of cruelty and the massacre and raping women and slaughtering children, this is not the Muslim Brotherhood. This is ISIS, probably even worse. 1,200 people, majority of them civilians, dancing and trying to celebrate their life. 800 people. Only minority are soldiers that arrived to there. This was a major collapse of our security doctrine, but this is another question. I'm saying it because in order to explain or in order to try to understand our behavior today, on one hand, we do not support our government. On the other hand, most Israelis, I totally disagree, but most Israelis believe that there are no innocent people among Palestinians, and we have the right to kill all of them.
I mean, international experts, Israeli NGOs, most other countries call what has happened since October 7th in Gaza a genocide by now.
No, it's not. It's not. A genocide is it's a legal term. A genocide means that you have the intention to erase this race, to erase Palestinians from earth. This is not a genocide. I'm not going to defend it. I am ashamed of what we did in Gaza. It's a war crime, but it's not a genocide. So if the language is important, yes, language is important.
But we can agree it is the worst kind of military operation I've seen.
No, come on.
Try to remember. I'm too young. I'm too young.
Okay, you are too young. You know how many civilians, not military targets, the Allies, how many Germans they killed in Dresden, it's...
I meant Israeli wars.
In the Israeli war, yes. In the Israeli war. No, but to get perspective, you have to understand the concept of war, which people that did not spend a day in the battlefield will never understand. A battlefield is a place in which you have the right to kill. Now, we were born, all of us, we are born with the concept, you will not kill. You do not have the right to kill. And then you join the army. And people tell me, you have to kill all the enemies. And now the enemy is not a state. And they are not soldiers. They look like civilians. He is a pharmacist during the day and he's a terrorist during the night. So you meet him in the middle of the day, in the battlefield. Will you shoot him or not? No one will give you an answer. No one. So the question is, what can we do? And in this case, the war after the 7th of October was a just war. It was a just war because it was after a massacre that no one can imagine. And the idea of this massacre was to kill civilians and children and women and to rape them. So it was a just war for the first 12 months. It was a just war not only because it was a response to a barbaric attack. It was a just war because you have to understand we fought an enemy that his military doctrine, and we saw it in his website, is to bring the Israeli soldiers, the IDF, into the middle of the cities to make sure that they will kill as many Palestinians, civilians, as possible, and then the world will support the Palestinian cause. So they used intentionally, this was the doctrine, the people as a human shield. This was the doctrine. Now, when you send your people to war, there is no way to avoid the killing of thousands of, it was the most dense battlefield ever fought. I don't know in specific cases, I don't know during the Second World War in Stalingrad or wherever. But this was a war. Now you have to understand, the Hamas built the largest shelter on earth. Hundreds.
The tunnels?
The tunnels. Yeah. There is no entry to any civilian Palestinian. Only Hamas activists. They could save thousands of Palestinians by just letting them go in. They didn't. So, just a moment.
Yes.
Okay.
We were at the tunnels.
Sorry?
We stopped at the tunnels.
Yes. So, okay, this was the result.
Yeah.
But after 24 months.
No, you said after 12 months, the just war ended.
Okay, after 12 months. Okay. In 2024.
Yes.
The end of 24, when the military commanders came to the government and said, there is nothing that we can achieve more by the use of military power. And this is a time to try to start to negotiate.
Well, good. So
But the government refused.
why?
Uh,
Was it in Netanyahu's and other ministers' interest to
Yes.
keep the war going?
exactly.
Why?
Our government today is a government at the moment that they will achieve a political agreement, they will not be elected. They need the war in order to survive in power. This is not a democracy anymore. If you really want to understand, you have to go back and to read George Orwell.
Animal Farm?
Not Animal Farm. There is a much better 1984.
Oh, yes.
Yes,
Read it twice.
right. Okay, this is relevant in order to make sure that you will understand the power of the external enemy for a totalitarian regime
Yes.
to hold in power. This is what we see in Israel today. This is the only way to explain the policy of our government today. You know, when ministers used to tell us for years that Hamas is an asset, they said, we are financing Hamas to make sure that Hamas will survive in power. Because Hamas is an asset. Because as long as Hamas is the Palestinian government in Gaza, and they are fighting or they are trying to decrease of the political power of the Palestinian Authority, so they are fighting each other. This is divide and control.
Yes.
So we don't have to negotiate. We can say to ourselves, and we can say to the world, there is no one to negotiate with. This was the idea.
Mhm.
And this was the idea that brought us to the 7th of October. So if we shall not change our policy, and we are still a democracy, we do not execute, we do not shoot our leaders, but we have elections in 3-4 months.
I mean, it looks like Bibi's coalition could actually be re-elected. It's not like
No, the coalition will not be re-elected, but there is a political scenario in which, again, we cannot go to explain all our problems as a society. Netanyahu government cannot be elected, but there is a possibility that no other elected party will be able to create a coalition because of the refusal to join the Arabs who are 20. We have 20% of Israeli Arabs as Israeli citizens. And especially after the 7th of October, they became a potential enemy because they are Arabs. Most of them are Muslims. So it's a crazy political situation. And Netanyahu will not be elected, but
You sure?
Sorry?
You sure?
Well, I'm not sure in anything, but
Like I talked to some Israeli political experts in the last couple of days, and they're afraid that he could actually pull it off again, because like the opposition is, you know.
well, first of all, it's good that we are afraid because it will make sure that they will go to vote.
Yes.
Last time in all the elections, the percentage of our people were much lower. The percentage that the people who went to vote. So at least we hope that today, all the people who do not want to see this government will go to vote. And in politics, nothing, or only God knows what will be the results. But the way a rational analysis of all the polls is Netanyahu will not be able to create a coalition. But it is a very, very realistic scenario that no one else will be able, so he will go on as a prime minister in a temporary, and he can, go on by 1 year, 2 years, every 3-4 months, we shall, etc., etc. So yes, it will be a major problem. But again, what I'm saying that it is our duty to do everything in order to replace our government. This is democracy, and if we will not be able to do it, so probably we do not deserve it.
I learned today, like 75% of Palestinian Israelis don't go to vote.
No.
How can how can they be motivated to go? Do you have an idea?
No, it's no. I don't know these figures. I think that they
Was it at the last election?
No, okay. No. It's I'm not sure, but anyhow, I think that less than 50%, but not 25%. Anyhow, well, in a way, they gave up on democracy. They say, okay, if you don't want us in any coalition, so why should we go to vote?
Yeah.
Because if we are not sitting in the coalition system in which the Israeli political system is built, on which you cannot really create any impact, you cannot influence if you are not a member of the coalition. Yeah. So yes, many of them are saying, yeah, we don't have, they gave up on the democracy, on the system, which is disaster.
Yeah.
And look, I have many Palestinian friends, Israeli Palestinians, and we are trying to do everything, but again, until now, we were not successful, and this is not the only battle that we lost. So yes, it's a great challenge for any democracy. By the way, we have to remind ourselves, we are dealing with the Israeli democracy who is collapsing inside. We are fighting each other, but all the liberal democracies worldwide are facing a great challenge. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that you see it in Germany, in France, in Europe. Israel, yes, Israel is a specific case because in addition to the changes, the revolutions, the media, etc., and the demographic change as a result of globalization that creates these, conflicts, domestic conflicts everywhere. The ongoing war in Israel. Madison, when he presented the American Constitution to the American people, he said, a democracy will not survive an ongoing war. Mm-hmm. And he was right. And what we see today is a miracle. The question is not why Israel is collapsing as a democracy. The question should be why it took us so long to survive as a democracy, for good or for bad, for more than 75 years or more than 140 years as a democratic society, not a democratic state, is a miracle. If people believe in miracles, but anyhow.
I do.
Okay.
Like we have to.
Yes.
We have a few topics, but one question regarding Israeli democracy.
Mm-hmm.
I have the feeling that at least some of the leading politicians in Israel don't care if there's an Israeli democracy. That they, maybe don't mind turning Israel into an autocracy. Some kind of theocracy.
Well,
I mean, when I look at Ben Gvir and they.
Yes, first of all,
some kind of dictatorship, democracy.
Right. Well, its coalition system is a very, very strange and not a perfect system.
We have a coalition system.
No, but it's you have first of all you have a constitution.
Yes.
And we don't. Mm-hmm. And today, the parliament is controlled by the government. Mm-hmm. You cannot pass any law without the support of the coalition.
Yeah.
And the support of the coalition, since Prime Minister has the right to fire every minister, so in a way, Prime Minister has a power over the parliament.
Yes.
Parliament is not autonomous entity anymore in Israel. And the legal system is the only, gatekeeper.
Yeah.
And they are doing everything in order to destroy the legal system. And in a way, they are doing it day by day. And you see it every day. You see it, and the question is, what should be done? Again, we have the right, we have the responsibility, we have the duty to go to the streets. In certain cases, we have the duty to refuse to any order, because in some cases, the law is not a legitimate law. If the government is doing it against its own people, because this is the whole concept of democracy. And civil disobedience was created, I don't know, during the 18th century, I don't know, 19th century, yes, against the slavery in America. Yes, Israel is not a perfect democracy, and if we shall not change our policy in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria, is apartheid. Israel is not an apartheid state yet, but in the West Bank, it's a reality of apartheid, when there is two different law systems against Palestinians, and that's it. So nobody can tell you that it is still a democracy, and I personally, I don't think that Israel today is a liberal democracy as a state, and it depends on us, which means that the government became part of the problem, the parliament became part of the problem, the legal system will not save us from ourselves, and it is for us. And if you ask me, we didn't speak on what we expect from the international community.
I was going to end with that question.
So let's end with this question. Because sorry,
I have a question regarding the justice system. Since you mentioned it, the successor at Shin Bet, not your immediate successor, but the head of the Shin Bet now,
director, yes,
David Zini.
Yes, Zini, yes.
He hates the Israeli justice system. I read, like there were some remarks.
I don't know. I don't want to discuss. I was against his nomination. I applied to the court, Supreme Court. The Supreme Court decided against us.
Like many consider him like a Jewish extremist, and
I don't want to discuss specific personalities. This is a result of a policy.
Yes.
He was elected by the Prime Minister, and the way I understand the Prime Minister, he chooses only people that he believes will follow his orders, not because his professional activity or because anyhow. This is the only reason to choose the gatekeepers for the Prime Minister. Whether it will be his ministers, whether it will be if he will have influence on the judges in the Supreme Court, and specifically, the director of the Israeli Shin Bet is a gatekeeper. So he was not elected because his great professional career.
He's loyal to Bibi.
Yes, this is the way I understand him, but I don't want to discuss it anymore. Anyhow,
you don't have to. I'm just telling my audience because they haven't heard of his name. There's a lot of protest against Zini. I read a quote like somebody said, it's like making Al Capone the chief of police in Chicago.
Okay, look. I think that
Like it's a different kind of head of Shin Bet than
yes.
when you were head of Shin Bet.
In order to follow the law of the Shin Bet,
Yes.
you have to understand that the director of the Israeli Shin Bet is living every day within attention. On one hand, he is under, he has to report to the prime minister. The prime minister is the minister responsible for the Shin Bet.
Yes.
On the other hand, his responsibility and his duty is to preserve the Israeli democracy, the system.
Yes.
So when the director of the Shin Bet finds himself in a situation, and this is a situation with our prime minister, that he demand from him something that it is against the whole concept of a liberal democracy.
Yes.
What shall he do? So a person who do not understand that he is living in a conflicting, values, and his responsibility for the democratic system and the democracy of the state of Israel is beyond his, obedience to the prime minister. I don't think that he can be, that he can follow
Yes.
the law of the Shin Bet.
I used to understand your former job as the head of Shin Bet is first and foremost loyal to the Israeli democracy.
Exactly.
And not loyal to the Israeli prime minister.
Yeah, this is the law. There is a law of the Shin Bet.
Yes.
It is written in the law that he has to report to the government and to the prime minister, but his duty is to preserve the Israeli democracy, the system. So we used to say it in a very simplistic way. The kingdom comes before the king. This is the way to explain it to the people who do not understand the complexity of, it's a legal system, government, etc., etc. We are here in order to preserve the kingdom and not to obey to the king.
Have you ever thought about what it would be like to be a Palestinian, to be on the other side,
Yeah.
to be the oppressed, to be under occupation?
Yes, I'm thinking about it every day. By the way, the first time when people ask me, "What did you learn in the Shin Bet?" I can speak about it for 2 years, but there are two very simple lessons, and don't laugh. The first lesson was that my enemies are human beings. I remember I discussed this with my wife, and she said, "Are you crazy? Of course they are human beings." I said, "You don't understand, when you are a military commander, your people expect from you to kill the enemies. So the enemies, whether you like it or not, are becoming a military targets. And I'm not proud of it. I killed many people in many ways. I knew nothing about them personally. I didn't know their names. I didn't know their families, their wives, their children, with whom they pray in the mosque. You didn't need it. A military commander, all what he asks is how to kill. Using knife or Kalashnikov or machine gun or a missile that you shoot to, 100 kilometers. But you know that people will die. You don't care because they are the enemy. The question is how? Technology, strategy, tactics. When you come to the Shin Bet, the question is totally different. You have to ask yourself, why. Why they are doing it. You have to understand every person. In order to understand him, you have to know everything about him. Otherwise, you cannot interrogate him. You don't know what to ask him. You cannot try to achieve information from him. You cannot try to recruit him as an agent. You have to know everything. First of all, his names. Muslims, they have 4 names. Tell you something about their family, where they came from. His children, to which school he sent his children. To schools of Hamas or to schools of the Palestinian Authority. Totally different. Palestinian Authority are looking for a compromise. 2 states. Hamas is a real enemy. He wants to eliminate. He do not agree to our existence. So when a person decides to which school, it means he tells you something about his ideology. So he is becoming a human being. You are not afraid of him. This is the first lesson. Second lesson, which is not far from the first. We, Israelis, we shall have security only if and when Palestinians will have hope. Hope is everything. So people ask me, are you crazy? I said, no. Let me translate it to a military terms. We speak military language. You cannot deter a person or a group of people if they are not afraid. Because if he is not afraid, he will commit suicide.
Nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose. If he has nothing to lose, you cannot take from him anything. You cannot threaten him. So people tell me, okay, no, you don't understand. Islam is something. I said, no. Go back to the Bible. You read the Bible? No. You know the story of Samson and Delilah? You don't? Okay, they know. By the way, there is a great song about, anyhow, so he was a Jewish hero. He killed Plishtim, anyhow, the people who, in our history. But he fell in love in a Palestinian woman, and she betrayed him. And he was arrested, and and they tortured him, and he decided to kill as many enemies. And he killed thousands of enemies when he was a very, very powerful person. So he destroyed the whole, building. They brought him in order to laugh on him because the prisoner. Anyhow, this is the story. So the first suicide attack in the written human history is in the Bible. By the way, you should read the Bible.
I plan on it one day.
Okay, well, very good.
Yeah.
So, by the way, when I became the director of the Shin Bet, I had to not only to read, to learn something about the Quran, and to learn something about the New Testament, Christians.
Yes.
Because finally, what I learned in the Shin Bet is that ideology is something that we need in order to understand, the reality.
Yeah.
But extreme ideology create violence. And this is why the Shin Bet has to study every ideology before it is becoming violent ideology, which is terror. So, yes, I told them, okay, it is not Muslims invented the suicide attack. It's a human behavior. A person who has nothing to lose. He will do everything. He will commit. He will kill everybody in order to achieve something. Sometimes it is bread for a child, and sometimes it is freedom. He just want to feel free. So these are the two lessons. So if you ask me, yes, I ask myself every time, how does the Palestinian feel? And by the way, I believe that in too many wars, I'm trying to understand our war. And I'm trying to understand why America entered into this war. And my answer is very simple. Not America, nor we understood our enemies. And the idea that, Iranian regime will surrender is crazy idea. Anybody who understands the enemy, everybody who knows something about the history of the Shia and the Karbala battle in the 7th century, 680, will tell you that they will not surrender. Because if you don't, Sun Tzu, you don't know him.
Chinese.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't know the Bible and you know Sun Tzu. Okay.
I was born in East Germany, like
very
where
good. Okay, very
there was
good.
like
Okay.
anti-religion. And, so. I will read it someday. Both Bibles.
So Sun Tzu, about 4,050 years, 4,000 years, he said, if you don't know the enemy, you will never be able to win the war.
Yes.
And we don't understand our enemies. By the way, he said something which is very relevant to the way I understand our government. He said, a cruel leader will burn his country in order to rule the ashes.
Yes.
So in a way, this explains, sometimes in history, Neron, in Roman, if you are too many years in power, if, like Louis XIV, l'état c'est moi, yes, sometimes you believe that you are the state, you are the kingdom. And this can explain the behavior of authoritarian regimes.
So, just understand you correctly. Like I asked if you ever thought about being Palestinian and fighting the occupation.
Yes.
Like if you had nothing to lose, you would fight.
I said it again and again, and I'll say it again. Although many people believe that I'm a traitor, if I were a Palestinian, I would fight against the Israeli occupation. I will never accept the Hamas ideas, but against the occupation in order to achieve my freedom. And I will add that every statement, Israeli statement, and every military commander who will give you a different answer, he is either stupid or he just do not know his enemy, and he will never win this war. That's it. The only way to win this war is to understand that we won this war. I'm repeating myself. We won this war because our enemies surrendered in Beirut in 2002. And if we shall not accept it, we shall bring ourselves to the end of the Zionist dream. Israel will not be a democracy, because if our border will be on the Jordan, we are not majority. And if we are not majority, we do not have the power, and we do not have the right to dictate the calendar, the language, our way of life, the way we celebrate our holidays, and that's it. This is the end of the Zionist dream.
Final question.
Yes, international.
How can the international community, and of course we're from Germany,
Yes,
German government support all the wars that Israel is
Yes, it's
conducting.
fighting.
How can Europeans,
Mhm.
Germans,
Mhm.
Americans help Israel
Yeah.
accept that you guys won the war?
First of all, to learn the history. I want to believe that all the German elected leaders know by heart the Arab Peace Initiative. I want to believe I expect people.
I'm not sure about this.
Okay, anyhow, so I'm sending a message.
Yes.
Tell them.
I will show them this
Okay.
interview.
Tell them that I believe that we won the war, and the Arab Peace Initiative that was accepted by all the Arab League members and later by 56 Muslim states, all the Muslim world accepted the Arab Peace Initiative, is the baseline in order to ignite negotiations between Israel and Palestinians. And the only way for us to accept it is don't boycott us, but don't support us unconditionally. And I believe in great gesture. Why I believe in great gesture? I'm a generation of Yom Kippur War. For us, until now, during the last 2 years, we lost about 2,000 people. And in Yom Kippur, during 3 years, in Yom Kippur, we lost 2,700 people in less than 3 weeks. So you can imagine the trauma for us, my generation. And 3-4 years later, we signed peace with Egypt. For us, Egypt was the devil. And I believe that it was before the Arab Peace Initiative. It was in 1967. And Sadat, he decided that what he has to do, he has to come to Jerusalem and to speak to the Israeli people. And he came to the Knesset, but he spoke in the television to the Israeli people. And he didn't threaten us. He told us, I want to be your friend. I want to sign peace with you, but I will do it only on the condition of Israeli-Palestinian relations. Before he came, I think that 90% of us Israelis saw him as a devil, as an enemy. 1 or 2 weeks after, it was amazing shift in the way we saw our enemies. Now, I want to translate this event. It was a dramatic event. Yeah, he had a partner, our prime minister, Begin. And both of them, they signed peace with the American interference. Today, after the 7th of October, which was a horrific event, what happened, the Palestinian issue came back to the table. If you will ask all the international leaders, I don't know, 180, they will tell you that only a reality of two states will create stability and prosperity in the Middle East. And it will create a major impact on the region and all the world. Because today it is obvious that it's not a small conflict between Israel and Palestinians anymore. It's a major regional conflict that creates a major impact on the global system, the economy, energy, political stability in many states. So, can we imagine a reality in which, I don't know, 190 too many, but the major leaders, I don't know, the 25 major leaders will come to Jerusalem and will tell us, listen, we want you. We want your security. We want stability. We want for you peace and prosperity. And we shall support you. We will be here for you. They will do it not because they love us, because today they understand more than ever that they need it in America, in Europe, for your economy and your political stability. And the terror will reach Europe everywhere. So they will do it, but they will promise us a dream. They will promise a dream.
But there needs to
But they will say, on the condition of you will negotiate with the Palestinians on the basis of the Arab Peace Initiative.
But you mentioned,
and you will have to divide this piece of land.
But you mentioned trust earlier.
Yes.
Like there's no trust in any.
But there was no trust before he came. This is exactly the case. As the trust was built, we need bravery. Mm-hmm. We need bravery for them to come. You know, I spoke to everybody. I met Arab leaders in the Emirates and in many places in Europe, and I told them, why you are not doing it? And he said, we will not come to a place in which the Prime Minister will not accept it. Mm-hmm. So, okay, yes, I agree, you have to wait for the elections. It is for us. They will not save us from ourselves. Mm-hmm. But yes, we need the international community to show the way and to create confidence.
As I said, I believe in miracles. It can happen.
Only a person who believes in miracles can survive in the Middle East.
Maybe I should move here.
Yeah, you should.
I mean, this was fun. Okay. This was very important. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Let's do this again sometime.
Come on.
No, like sometimes we come back regularly.
Okay, very good.
Every few years.
Okay.
And I'm sure there will be much more to discuss.
Yeah, it's okay. I accept, not because it's your audience will be saturated, but in the Middle East we used to say that it's the most interesting place worldwide because everything is happening here.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that if you will come in 6 months, it will be a different reality. And I believe that it will be a better reality. And the dream that I'm dreaming today, the peace, I will not see peace in my lifetime. But it's okay. I'm 82 years old. It's okay. These trees, we spoke about these trees. I did not plant these trees, but we have to plant the ideas.
Yes.
So our children, our grandchildren, the people, you said that the audience is a young audience. So yes, I think that they shouldn't give up on the future of the Middle East and on the future of Israel.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.